Well, I haven't done any building for a while, so I kind of want to ease back into it. And also, I sort of want to do something that's simple, good for a beginner. And another thing is, I've been flying rubber RC for about 10 years now, and anytime if people get interested, but they never figure out what the power is. Anytime they come up there, they think, what is it, electric? Sometimes they notice the prop's going kind of slow. They think it's some sort of special type of electric. Nobody's ever guessed it's rubber power. Okay, so for my next one, I sort of want to do this because it has just a stick fuselage, and it'll have a hanging rubber motor there, so it'll be obvious that it's rubber power. I think this will be fun. So here it is. It's a kit by Easy Built Models. It's called the Ritz. Okay, it's got a 30-inch wingspan, and I always like to do about 30-inch for RC, so this is perfect. Here's another one. I kind of like the blue one. Looks nice. Alrighty. And here's the kit, okay, and it's the usual things. It's got some nice tissue. I'm going to use Mylar. I'll probably use these decals on the wing. There's the rudders. It's got all the ribs and things. Now, one thing I was nice to see is that the stick is nice and hard. It's about 12 pounds, I would guess, just from the feel and stuff. And you really want a hard for the fuselage. You don't want to mess around. Same with the boom. It's pretty hard, and I was glad to see that. It's a little longer, okay, and I know I'm debating about whether I'll trim the stick. I'll show you as we go along. I'll figure that out as I'm building it. They give you a nice 10-inch prop, but I'm going to use a 9.5-inch gizmo because I want to use a gizmo geezer for the front end. Now, normally on old timers I don't change things, but here I did a little bit because unfortunately RC rubber's never caught on anyway, so I don't have to worry about not being able to enter it as an old timer. It's going to have RC rudder only. Oh yeah, before I forget, let me mention a couple things. Now, luckily a friend of mine, Tom, built this already, thank goodness, and he noticed a few things. This is a little off. You'll see here it has to be squared up. It's just off about a 32nd, so you have to square this up a little bit. Also, the top wing is correct. It's 24.5, but the bottom wing is an 1/8 inch short. You can see I drew the line here, okay? So that's important. You got to add an 1/8 inch. Tom also pointed out that this rib here is closer on the tip than this one. I'll try to make that symmetrical when I build it. So those are a couple little things you got to pay attention to. Now, the only other thing I'm going to change is, if you can see over here, the rudder, the stab, it has a twin rudder stab, okay? I know some people like that, so don't get angry at me, but personally, I never liked it. I don't like these chopped off looking stabs. The whole point is it looks nice and elliptical like the wing here. So I really don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do, and also with the RC, it's going to make it harder. So I'm just going to make it a single rudder. And actually on Ritz, on some of his other ones, he actually does have that as well. Now, to keep it in line with the other, what I did is I made a copy of the wing tips, and then I reduced them about 75%. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to put these on, you see, like that. And I'm going to make a regular stab. There you go. And for the rudder, I made the tip again, but I actually enlarged it and made it a little bit wider because I want the rudder to be about 4 inches by 4 inches. And there you go. So it also has the same tip. So this way it keeps in all with the design. All right. Now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this down a little bit. Okay. And so I can put the gizmo geezer in there. All right. And I'm going to lower this just a little bit as well. I'll probably use a Crockett hook. That's what Tom did. That seems to work well. I haven't decided how I'm going to attach this yet. They show with a wire. I got to think about it. Landing gear, I'm not going to do the double. I'll just do a single 32nd. I might use some lighter balsa wheels. We'll see about that. And same with the wing wire. I'll also use a 32nd. I'm not going to slant it like this. That just makes life more difficult. I'm going to have it go straight up. I like to put the receiver in between if I can, so I'll probably find the CG first. I think he shows the wing way too far back. It should be up here. I'm also going to move the landing gear up too. You want a longer moment here, and Tom also pointed that out on his, and he does that on his as well. And then I'll probably put the servo just on a piece of ply back here, and probably just a little 32nd push rod. If I have any tubing, fiber tubing, I'll use that instead, but I got to see what I have. Okay? So I think this is going to be a real fast build. I haven't covered now in over 2 years, so I need some practice anyway. And then it'll be fun to get out and give it a shot. Okay, we got everything built, so let me show you what I did here. Here's the stab, alright, and I made my usual slot because I like to plug the rubber in on the bottom. I filled that in a little bit. And here's the fin, okay, there you go, this is ready to go. Here's the rudder, and you can see I hinged it. I like to use this, it's a little bit of 0.2 millimeter Mylar tape, but there's other things you can use as well. And you only need 2 little pieces here, and that makes a nice rudder. Okay, I'm going to put the push rod will go in there. And so, you know, that just plugs into the stab, like that. Okay, so after it's covered, then I'll plug it in, and that's done. And then this actually plugs into the back of the fuselage. Let me show you that. Let me show you the wing here. So I pretty much just built the wing straight out of the kit. Okay. The only changes I made is one, I thought it felt a little too flexible, so I put a bottom 16th. You can see it there. Alright, that goes up to the front. That just helps to stiffen it. And I used an 1/8 inch here. This is 4 to 6 pound, the lightest I had. Alright, it looks like there's 2, but there's really only one real rib. I don't know if you can see it, but here it's just the top and the bottom. The reason I do that is because when I cover with Mylar, I like to have the Mylar stick directly to balsa. Alright, years ago I'd have a 16th rib here and I'd go Mylar over Mylar and it would look great, but a few years later I noticed some of them it would shrink, you could see from the paint, and it would loosen a little bit. So I think the Mylar sticks better to raw balsa than it does to itself, alright, with the glue stick. So this way I could put a nice piece here and it grabs it nice, got an 1/8 inch, and then for the center the same thing. So that's why I do that. And I think that was it on the wing. Otherwise it's straight out from the kit. Now I did do a few things on the fuselage, a couple things, so let me show you. Let's start from the back. I put a little tail skid on because I don't want the stab dragging on the Mylar. The newer Mylar is a lot softer, but still it's not good. This is where you plug the stab in, you see. So there's a little piece like that and the stab plugs in. I also put a little platform here because, you know, I like to make sure there's absolutely no tilting even though it's going to be glued in. Alright, so here's the rear hook. You can see I made sure there's plenty of clearance. I actually drilled it and let it go through on the top. I wrapped it with a little Kevlar thread and then I soaked it with a little CA. It's overkill. This is incredibly sturdy. Oh yeah, you can see I attached the back by insetting it. I know Tom had problems with this. If you put it on the top, it's kind of like a lever and it bakes off, or even on the side. So what I did to make it stronger, the stick actually ends right around here. I actually embedded it. I made a little 1/8 inch slot and glued it right in there because that's solid. It'll have to break the whole thing to break that. I filled in with a little balsa here just so it has a nice, you know, little taper. Okay, so here's where the servo goes. I'll show you that later. Just slips in there and a little bit of glue. And a 5-minute epoxy, and that's important. I'm going to just glue the receiver here. You know, I'm going to use the orange receiver. I'm just going to put a little 5-minute epoxy in. There's a switch. It's nice to have the switch because this way you can just turn it on when you're ready to fly and turn it off as soon as you're done. Alright, and that saves the battery a lot. You get a lot more time that way. I made the post. Now, and then you can see what I did is I took a little 16th dowel and I joined them, alright? And what I'm going to do first is just temporarily glue it, okay, with the ambroid. Because then if I want to move it later, I can use acetone to loosen the ambroid. And then once I get the wing positioned, I'll do it permanently, alright? Now they show it where it's fixed to the wing. They don't have this. So here I can rubber band the wing on, you see, so the wing's removable. They don't show it that way, but you know, they show it where this is fixed to the wing and you move that around. But I would say that's really bad because it's crucially important to have the wing, you know, set perfectly and lined up perfectly. You don't want to move any of this around. So I would fix that in place and then you could just strap the wing on. Now for the landing gear, what I did is I took 2 little pieces of hardwood, you see, and I put them, first I glued the front, then I took a little 30-second wire and pushed it up to make sure it was tight. And I did that on both sides. So this way the landing gear just kind of slip and pop in there. Now it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, so I had to trim it a little bit here so it can kind of slide in. And here, I'll show you. You see? So the wheels come off, and then it just slips into here, kind of pops in there, really, boom. And there you go. And then I have a little hold down. Now I put a little nut here, you see, on the bottom, and then it screws in. And so once you get the landing gear in, there you go. And this is the way I usually do my landing gear. I thought this worked really nice. So that keeps it on. I'm not going to move the landing gear around. Now I made the front so it'll take a Gizmo Geezer prop. Here I have one of the newer ones. Okay, this is just so you can see I used a little nose button thing. This will just pop right in there. I'm not ready quite yet. And basically what I did is I had a center section, and then you can see it here, and then I put sheeting on the side, and then I drilled the hole, and then I kind of sanded it to make it as streamlined as I could. Okay, to me it kind of looks like a little motorcycle gas tank at this point. I'm almost tempted to put a little Harley over here, but for fun, but I'm not going to do that right now. Then I put 3 coats of 50% thin dope on it just to seal it all up. Okay, so now the last things I got to do is I'll mount the equipment and stuff like that. Now the battery I'm just going to probably rubber band to the side. I can move that around to move the CG. There isn't really a lot of room to move the wing. Even if I put it all the way forward here, here's the approximate CG with the equipment I've been checking. It's going to be over 60%, which is fine. But we'll see how that works. Wheels, I just used some little plastic wheels. And it's a 30-second wire, okay? I really wanted to save weight on that. All right? So I'll get covering it, and I'll mount everything, and then I'll be back. All right, so I'm actually going to show you some covering here. Now, I really haven't shown much on the covering because, to be honest with you, my approach is primitive. I don't make frames or jigs or do anything fancy. It's almost embarrassing. But I'll show you anyway if it helps people. Now, the other thing I should mention is that you got to find in the end what works for you, okay? And that's basically what I've done as well. Now, I do have some little biases. I know one way people attach covering is they'll use contact cement, you know, and you can thin it with toluene, but that's highly toxic. And I try to use as few toxic chemicals as possible. I mean, one thing I like about, you know, building is I do everything with Typon for the most part, and that's non-toxic. The thing I like about Mylar is I don't have to do any doping anymore, and that's also nice because I don't really have a good space for that. You can see here I'm actually doing a little doping right now on some of the wheels and front ends and things like that. But, you know, first of all, I have a good quality 3M mask with filters, and I have a triple air fan as well. So, but with Mylar, the only things I really have to dope are the fuselage. I don't have to do the wing, the stab, or the rudder. It's really nice. So I'm going to try showing you covering this. Oh, another thing is a second way people do it is with balsa lock, which is fine, and you iron it on, but I don't think that's good with delicate rubber structures, to be honest with you. And also you can't pull it and move it like I do to get a nice smooth covering. Okay? So I'm just going to show you what I do. Now I use glue stick. I usually just call this Yoo-Hoo, but and this is it. I get the blue is the more recent one, so you can see it a little bit when you're putting it on. Okay, and then I'm going to use a 1/4 mil Mylar. It's clear. This is from FAI. And for the wing, I'm going to use a 1/3. I already did the rudder, or the fin and the rudder. Here we go. So those are ready to go. I just got to put the control horn here, and that's ready, and I'll paint it. I did the bottom of the stab. So now I'm going to show you the top. Okay. So the first thing is you can't deal with Mylar. It's too sticky and tacky, so you got to use something that sticks to. You can use foam core board. I like to just use paper towels. So here's the Mylar. You see, you get it right on the paper towel, so you're not dealing with it. And there you go. Now it'll lay flat. And I'm going to cut out the piece I need. So here's the stab. So I don't know. Let's see. I'll probably take a piece like that. Should be good. And then I just get a razor blade and lightly drag it across to kind of score it. Now you got to kind of get the hang of this. Now I've done this with the OS film, which is much more delicate, so this is easy in comparison. And there you go. You see, I just cut it off. Okay, there you go. And we're ready to go. Whoops. And then I'm going to get that away because it's a pain. So now we got the piece. And let me put that back. Okay. And of course I'm going to turn it this way. All right. Now you could do a jig and things like that, but in the end you'll see all I do is I pick it up and I lay it on. All right. You could also do it while it's lying down too. That's another option, but I'll just show you the way I like to do that. So I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. Okay, and get this ready to go. So let me think, I'm trying to think of any other pointers. So I think the paper towel, you can see, it's just a lot easier to deal. I never pick up and I'm never dealing with the film. Now I'm going to do the glue stick, okay? And here I just, you know, again, give it a light coat. Now it depends on what I'm doing. For ribs and things like that, if it's under camber, I'll put it on. Sometimes it's good to put it on all the ribs, like on a wing, because then it's easier to patch. And sometimes I don't. It depends on the situation. So now I'm just going to rub it along. Now this one it's kind of old, so it doesn't show up as blue as much. I should probably get some new ones because this one's already a couple years old, but I think it's okay. So I'm sorry, I'll try to stay on camera. It's tricky to do while you're filming. So you can see I'm just rubbing around there. I'll throw a little on here and maybe a quick touch there. And then I keep it off my hands for the most part because you don't want sticky hands. So now I'm going to go around here, and you see, I think the things you got to be careful about here is you want to get enough of a coat, but you don't want it to be so thick that if it's too thick, I think it doesn't stick as well. I think you just want enough to make sure it's on there. Let me go around, and so the leading edge, the top. All right, I'm pretty much ready to go. I'm just going to go again just to make sure. Another little coat here. And here's the other thing, let me make some other points. Keep a toothpick handy, because if you get little clumps, let me do it on purpose. Suppose I get a little clump in some place, I don't like it, or something like that. What I do is I go along with the toothpick. If there's a clump here, I'll clean it out. Keep another paper towel so you can wipe it off. This went on pretty nice. If there are any little lumps or anything, I'll kind of smooth them out a little bit. And whoops, where did I put that glue stick? Hold on one second, here it is, and just get a little bit more on there. Okay, so if there's any clumps, like here's a little clump, I'll smooth it out with the toothpick. You don't want to get it on your hands or anything. And yeah, that leading edge felt a little dry, so let me get that. Okay, and that's it. Don't get too nuts with it, because if you get on too much, it won't stick as well. And also, if you get clumps, you know, it's not going to dry right and things like that. So smooth them all out. And then here you go. All I do is I pick it up like this. And I just kind of try to hold it fairly snug like this. And this is how I do the wing as well. And yeah, of course, Mylar's a pain in the neck to deal with. But this is all I do. The camera's in the way. Yeah, let me just do it. I'm going to, try to get it on as best as I can. It's hard to do on film. And here's the beauty of it. You see, you can pull it and move it. Hey, I don't like the way that is right there. I'm actually going to lift it up. There you go. Look at that. And now we're going to pull it here and pull it there a little bit. So this is the important part. Okay, you can't do this if you're ironing. All right, you can move it around for a while on the Mylar. And what I do is I go around and I just kind of snug it down. And also you should rub it, when you're ready to position it, rub it, you'll see the balsa grain will show up. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I can actually see the balsa grain, and that means it's sticking nice, okay? And so I'm just gonna go around, and you see I'm pulling and tugging a little to try to get it smooth. Look at that, there you go, and here. And I'm not gonna do this whole thing, I think I'll stop the camera, but this is basically what I do. And I go around, and we're almost done on this wing. It's already, I like to get it as smooth as possible because you don't want to shrink it too much. Look at this one, it's awful. So I'm going to lift it up actually. Look at that, it's already stuck to the bolts, but I'll lift it up, you see? I'm going to pull it, and now I'm going to work on this half a little bit. So the nice part about Mylar is you really got about a good 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes before it really starts to set up. And so you can do this. And when I finally get it where it's like I'm starting to like the looks of that, that's when I'll start to smooth it down to the balsa, okay? Take it easy with this, because on delicate structures like this stab, you don't want to warp it. I hope I'm on screen here. You don't want to warp it, so just be careful and get it mostly smooth. And now I'm starting to rub it down because that's looking pretty good. Of course, you can shrink out little ones. Also, I tend to do like I do with tissue, is keep the wrinkles this way, loose, so you can shrink them. If you get a little tight corner thing, you can never shrink that out properly. So you really don't want to do that. And this is looking pretty good, actually, for the most part. So this is all I'm going to do. I'm going to go around, tighten it. And I have to say, you know, I know people comment, wow, you go, boy, nice covering job. That looks fantastic. Well, this is probably it. This is really the only trade secret. If you do it with ironing, you can't do this. But with you know, the glue stick and doing it by hand, you can go around and you can smooth the whole thing. We're almost there already, even though I'm not paying attention because I'm talking. But we're almost there, actually. That's looking pretty good to me. All right, I'm going to cut the camera, and then what I do is let this dry for a good, at least 3 or 4 hours. I think actually overnight is actually the best. Okay, and then you could trim it. So I'll come back and I'll show you that part. But we already got it pretty good, and it should be nice and smooth once I shrink it. All right, so it's been sitting for a few hours, and I'm ready to trim off the Mylar. Before I do that, I want to mention a couple other things before I forget. And one is that I stick the Mylar to the raw balsa. I don't dope it or anything. A friend of mine did that, and then the covering peeled off easy. I think it sticks better because the glue stick can soak into a little bit, you know, into the raw balsa, and you really get a much better, you know, adhesion there. And I'll tell you, if you ever have to remove it, you'll see sometimes it actually takes the balsa with it. It sticks pretty well. That's why I think the glue stick is sufficient. All right, so just do it on raw balsa. Just sand it so it's smooth, and then you're ready to go. Do the glue stick right on that. Now, another thing I do is before I trim it off here, I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to get it smooth, all right, like on the bottom there. And so I'll check with the heat gun, just doing a little bit, just to make sure that it's going to get smooth. Now, this is more important on the wingtips, all right, because you know, I always have perfect wingtips, but it didn't always come out perfectly. And if it doesn't, then at this stage, if it doesn't look like it's going to shrink right, you can just peel it off and redo it. And I actually had to do that on the Lanzo. One tip had a very slight little wrinkle, and instead of letting that bother me forever, I just peeled it off and redid it, and it was absolutely perfect the second time, so I was very happy. So I use a heat gun like this, okay? And that's it. That's all I do. Now, you don't want to concentrate it on there like this, because eventually you'll burn a hole in it. It's probably good to do a little test thing so you get an idea. I kind of just blip it on and off. The beauty I like about this compared to using an iron to shrink it is I can come in and out quick. I can get very nice control. So here I'm just going to check because there's a little thing here from, this is just the way the Mylar comes, and I want to make sure I'll be able to get that out, and then I'll do the rest of it later. Also, with thin structures like this, whoops, you got to take it easy because you can warp it like a pretzel. All right? So there you go. I'm going to turn this on just to show you. All right, it's nice and hot now. And then there, this is all I do. All right, looks good to me. Ooh, yeah. And you can come in there a little bit. All right, oh yeah, that's nice. Okay, yeah, see, I can immediately see this is not going to be a problem. Everything came out, look at that. Nice and smooth, looks good. Okay, it affected the bottom there a little bit, so I'll just re-blast that a little bit. All right, there you go. And you can get pretty aggressive if you need to with this. Okay, but here I just want to demonstrate for now. Now, here's another thing I got to mention before I forget, and that is you want it, that air expands in there, and you want to let it out. So what I do is I poke a little hole in, just usually in the corners and the tips. Like this one looked a little funny. I'm going to make sure I have a little hole there, just so the air can get out, because otherwise what you'll see is it tightens up, but then when the air cools it gets loose again, and so on. Okay, so now I didn't do it all the way, but I just wanted to check that everything looks good, and it does. So now I'm going to trim off the ends with a razor blade. All right, and you know, these days, as you saw in the beginning, I don't think Mylar sticks well on Mylar. I think it sticks well on balsa, so I don't really try to overlap them. Okay, I usually just, and here I'm just going to get it, when I did the bottom, I did it flush, and now you can see I bent it over the front. I'm going to do it flush on the bottom again. Then after I trim it all off, I get some glue stick and I just rub it around and rub it down. I already did that with the fin here. Okay. And then the absolutely final last thing I'll do is sometimes on the balsa it's not sitting smooth. You might see you have a little wrinkle. If you want to get that out, that's when I finally use the heating iron. Here's one. This is for bigger ones. For smaller ones like this, I'll use this. Okay. And then I'll put it on really high. I mean, put it on high. And then I'll just go like that just to shrink it on the edge to smooth it out. To be honest with you, these came out pretty good. I don't think I'm going to have to do that on this. But sometimes you have to do that just to smooth it out if there's a little wrinkle where it's on the balsa. Here I got most of those out because I'm aware of that. I got most of it out with my thumb when I was rubbing it down, as I showed you earlier, So I don't really need to do that on this one, okay? But sometimes you do. All right, so we're ready. Let me finish up the stab and I'll put those together. I'm gonna get going on covering the wing. And then the last thing I'll have to do is the assembly and painting. All right, so here we're doing the wing. It's the same thing again. Now I'll give you one or two little pointers here of what I do. So first, I'm holding it like this, just like I did for the stab, and then I sort of get it down here first while I'm still holding it on this side up. In other words, I attach it to the rib here first, okay? And by the way, that's another reason why it's nice to have this wide rib. It makes it easier. And then once it's attached to the rib, I might hold it like that and I'll pull it tight this way, okay? This way along the length, and then I'll attach it at the tip, all right? Like that. And you know, it'll be a little loose, that's fine. So then I'll pull it this way like before. And here, you know, it's good actually if it's a little loose, because then what you can do when you pick it up and you pull it, the glue which gets on there will come outside, so you won't see it on the inside. And even if it gets on the inside, don't worry about it. By the time it's dry and you paint it, you're not going to see it for the most part. And then I go around again and I'm smoothing it all. I just did this one. I did the other half, and you know, as I said, I like to let it dry for about 4 hours. I already did the bottom. Bottom's looking pretty good. Okay. So we're going to let that dry for a while, then I'll shrink it, trim it off. We'll see how it goes. Okay, here it is, the Ritz. All right, I sprayed it with Just for Flowers. This is called Lilac. It's a nice color. You can see I got the motor on there. Let me come down and come in a little bit. All right, so you can see I held it on the rear hook, well hopefully you can see, with the T-hook. I used that to hold on the rear, and it's got the gizmo for the front, all right? And the reason I did that is I'm gonna wind it off the plane, of course, and you know, it's nice to have, this has 2 hooks in the back, so I can put a wire in there and take it off and put it on the plane, okay? So we got a gizmo geezer for the front end. That's important because I want an adjustable nose button. You can see the wheels splay a little bit. I don't think this is going to be able to land properly on the landing gear. I think it's just going to tip over. So if you want it to actually land properly, you probably got to use the .047 they gave you, or maybe you can get away with .040. But I wanted to try the 32nd because it's lighter. And also I replaced the plastic wheels with balsa wheels, okay? Now you can see the equipment's on there, the servo and the receiver, and there's a switch. Maybe let me grab it here, and you can see that's all there, so that's ready to go. For the battery, I just rubber banded on the other side. Let me turn it around here. And there you go, and it's at the center of gravity, okay? The thing I like about the gizmo is the rubber isn't hanging slack. You probably remember when we were kids, the rubber would be hanging down or fall off, and then it would just kind of dive into the ground. That won't happen here because the rubber, the gizmo keeps it taut, all right, which is really nice. So I'll probably get out tomorrow and try a few test glides and hand winds, and then we'll see how it goes. Alright, a little update on the Ritz. Now I did get out flying. The first time I did a few hand glides, a few winds, and it kind of tapped the ground. It didn't look like it hit that hard, but the tail boom broke off. So I fixed that, I put some wire in it, I reinforced it with bass, went out, and it was flying nice, circling around the field. But again, it stalled a little at the end and tapped on the nose, and I couldn't believe that the boom broke yet again. Alright, so I don't want to have any more broken booms. I should say this also booms. This also happened to Tom. He broke his twice too. Now he used Polonia, which is a nice light strong wood, which I think is a good choice. I don't have any of that. So what I did is, I don't want the tail boom breaking again. So I replaced it with a carbon tube. It's very light, okay, incredibly strong. So at this point, and then I reinforced it with a little 30-second ply here. And the tube actually sinks in about 2 inches here. So this is going to be the last thing to break from now on. Everything else will have to break before that. That tube is very, very strong. Okay? So I'm looking forward to getting out again because it looked like we were making some progress there until the boom broke. And we'll try some more flying. Test flight the Ritz. 300 hand lines. Here we go. It's a little breezy, but... Okay, that looks good. There you go.
Oh, it really tilts a lot to the right. Oops. Okay, that wasn't bad. Here we go, the Ritz, got 500 lines. Come on, come on. Oh, it's stalling, I don't know why. There we go. Here we are. That launch was a little funky. Away from those trees. There. Well. Uh-oh. Go!